Thank you. Hello, everyone. I want to acknowledge that I'm on Larrakia country today and want to thank Auntie Mary for the welcome. I would also like to acknowledge all Larrakia elders past and present, especially as I've had the very special privilege of spending most of my life here in Darwin and having many friendships with Larrakia people over that time. Not too far from here at Brownsmart, toward the Esplanade, is one of the starting points of the overland telegraph, a technology that in colonial Australia connected my mob in Central Australia to mob up here, to mob in Indonesia, all the way through to England. We're connected and structurally impacted by systems and system legacies that sometimes we're not even aware of. The telegraph line is often thought about as a feat of colonial infrastructure. But what's missing from that yarn is that its story is intrinsically connected to the topographic systems Indigenous people use to traverse and trade through this land for thousands of years prior. Think of where every major town along the Stuart Highway is. Alice Springs, Katherine, Tennant Creek. These are where the telegraph repeater stations were located. But more importantly, sacred places with plentiful water. The telegraph system couldn't have happened without the help of Indigenous translators and knowledge holders, whose country the telegraph system sits on top of. But what I love is the telegraph line used to use ceramic as insulators. And Aboriginal people throughout, the telegraph line used to throw rocks and smash them and reshape them into cutting utensils and knives. I like to think of technological lineages when I wear my technologist hat. The telegraph is actually the first digital technology that went through Central Australia. It has a direct lineage to what we use for communicating with LLMs today. And for our arts practice, the telegraph, specifically in Australia, was instrumental in the standardization of copyright laws globally. So with the fatal deterministic way in which this AI slop has been released into the world, how can we smash some ceramic insulators? So hello, Brownsmart. Brownsmart is actually my artistic home. From 18 years old, I was here as the rapper MC Heffer. Was involved in very early yarns with other NT artists, dreaming and imagining a space where musicians and artists could perform that would later become Happy Yes. I've done poetry here, speeches, meetings, workshops, fallen in and out of love, and probably had a few good vomits in the garden outside. This place has survived cyclones and bombings and the terrible dancing of the aforementioned wannabe rapper, who is now yarning to you somehow about leadership. So hello, I'm Matt Ngamurarri Heffernan. I told Ananth, if he didn't pronounce my name properly, I would haunt him for the rest of his life, and my brother. But I have a few Luritja names. Ngamurarri would be my official Aboriginal name, the one that's used when I'm in trouble. But I'm also Tapaljari, which is my skin name, Karli Papu, Akarndu. But I didn't want to stress old mate out too much with all of those. 3 key takeaways. So you can tune out if you want, but just take these away. The arts aren't a political priority in our country, but it's through our arts practice that we change the culture around us. All change is small change. Start in your backyard. Or if you're from my generation or younger and can't afford or remember what a backyard is, start in your community. And lastly, systems optimize for homeostasis. They don't want to change. Leadership necessitates friction. The name Ngamurarri is actually the name of my great uncle, Mick Ngamurarri, a founder of the Papanatula or dot painting arts movement. What blows my mind is that I can basically go anywhere in the world and see the works of my family in art galleries. By the way, if you're visiting from out of state, I would recommend checking out the museum. It has some great exhibits and a collection of dot paintings. And if there's any museum folks, you can slip me $20 after the show. Thank you. Papanatula and dot painting isn't just a thing that happened. Papanya is the convergence of histories. It's a community 250 kilometers northwest of Mparndua, Alice Springs, where the telegraph was coming through. And Dari, or Hermansburg, is another community. It's mostly made up of the Western Aranda people. Over the period of early NT colonization, more and more non-Aranda people were being pushed off their land and into Indari, Hermansburg. So with Hermansburg full, Papanya was established and the overflow was moved there. Papanya was a diverse mix of mobs: Walpri, Pintupi, Pitjantjatjara, and Madjara, Aranda, Luritja, some of whom had long-standing beef, still do, sort of. Papanya was little more than a few humpies, dongas, and a school. For a time, conflicts and social problems stewed. But it's from this melting pot and clash of people and language the arts movement arrives, with a beautiful mural of our local Jukurpa totem, the Jupi, or honey ant, painted on the side of the school building. White fellas from the government school admin decided to paint over it. But this was the catalyst for the entire Western Desert art movement. And next, the founding members designed the dot painting art style that honored our stories while obfuscating the most sacred parts of our traditions. An organization was formed so that profits made from the selling of artworks would go back to funding communities, including now the dialysis machines in Keynote. See, art is always pushing the boundaries and setting the tone for what is happening in our cultural zeitgeist. We already are in the practice of leadership. We can't leave cultural change up to AI, local councils, or government. Because if we did, the Chupi honey ant painting would today still be considered vandalism, graffiti. But what will be remembered in 50 years? The global impact of the dot painting arts movement, or whichever dipshit was chief minister at the time. Let me take you to the 1980s to early 1990s to another community, Yuendamu, home to the Walpri people, who I also have connection with. Over many decades of anthropologists coming in and out of the community in their white Toyotas with various video cameras, the Walpri had amassed a collection of old tapes of ceremonies, footy matches, and stories. But more importantly, the anthropologists brought the technology through which the Yapa, the Walpri people, could record and share their own yarns. When the satellite dishes for TV arrived, they were worried that the young ones would get their heads filled with rubbish like Days of Our Lives. It's an actual quote, by the way. So they hacked the satellite signal to broadcast their own stories, including a Walpri-style Sesame Street and their own news, Walpri News. Of course, the broadcasting license folks weren't happy. Each step of the way, the NT government at the time was putting up barriers. Other non-Indigenous radio and television agencies were trying to block it as well. But it's through this punk moment that the governing bodies were forced into considering policy for Aboriginal media, the direct lineage to NITV and other massive media agencies that represent Aboriginal people. It's from this interruption of the status quo that the Yapa, the Warlpiri people, were able to publicize the history of the Coniston massacres. And it's from this same collective of Yapa media makers, the Bush Mechanics emerges. Bush Mechanics, if you haven't seen it, is an awesome TV series, which was kind of semi-fictional, showing mob trying to get from Yuendamu to another community, often for footy. But the vehicles are barely functional, so they do the next best thing. When the cars break down, use whatever is available around them to make it work. Spinifex resin for repairing tires, spare parts from other broken down cars along the road. Those cars weren't made for our country out there. Mulga as makeshift gear sticks, repairing the car just enough to get to that next place. So then we arrive at today. We have AI, LLMs, and even robots dominating discussions about the relevance of artists. Conversations about copyright and IP theft, massive geopolitical shifts, massive local political shifts, technological changes in how we communicate, and social media further fracturing our ability to reach outside of our own echo chambers. Well, I'm just old enough to remember when the internet was going to doom the arts. Napster, torrenting. And prior to these technologies was the computer, the typewriter, film, photography, and so on and so on. This is why I premise this yarn on the technological lineages, because at each disruption, artists have kept making art and kept inventing new ways in which to imagine and engage with the technology and/or massive geopolitical shifts. The telegraph line for all my central mobs, all the way up to Darwin, here for the Larrakia, we continued and continue to create. Through Indigenous art, we are constantly pushing Australia to reconcile and integrate its own history and identity as separate from England, Europe, and America. An identity intrinsically connected to the histories of our Aboriginal people, despite how much this country doesn't want to accept that truth. So the question isn't whether you're a leader, it's whether you're prepared for what happens, good or bad, when you actually move something. One of my mentors says, getting a no from a question isn't the scary part, it's when people say yes. Systems push back, people push back. That's the nature of leadership. Friction is not failure. So pop the bonnet, see what needs to be fixed, stuff Spinifex into a flat tire, and smash some ceramic insulators. Kalapalya, thank you.